So, classical education and history. This is an approach. So it's not necessarily something that you memorize. It's also not specifically a method that you follow. And if you follow it wrong, you mess up everything. I have found this, my wife will tell me that one of the things that I'm good at is just kind of making do with what's there with the history class. And when she teaches a course, she's a much harder worker than I am and always more well prepared. But sometimes that approach in history analysis gets in the way, because sometimes the discussion will go in a way where you didn't imagine it to go. And so you have to be a little bit more loose with the history discussion. So it was first implemented by the Greek historians Herodotus and Thucydides, who wanted to investigate, travel, interview people, and find out what actually happened. Before that time, most histories were written by people who were trying to praise the king or the leader. And when we read these today, we have to be very careful to know and figure out, did that actually happen, or were they just trying to praise the leader? We all know certain journalists favor certain politicians. So when we read those journalists, we're very cautious. Oh, did that really happen? I don't know. I need to read a few more articles about it. Well, with Thucydides and Herodotus, they laid the foundation. This is how you write history. So there are these five steps that my students, ages 12 and older, use when they learn history. The first is tools of the historian. They learn what does every historian do, and the students learn how they do that as well. So at the beginning of the year, they learn these tools. Then they're given open-ended questions. Questions that could have 2 or 3 or 4 possible answers. So never a yes or no question for the big discussion. Then they do their research. As a 12 or 13-year-old, I recommend them using one textbook and maybe one primary source document. So a primary source document is something that was created by an eyewitness to history. The textbook is something that was created by somebody, doesn't have to be alive today, but somebody who was not an eyewitness. So it's nice to have that textbook, because it might be more understandable to them if it's a good textbook, and not a horrible one, of course. Then the primary source document is from the actual person from that time period. So if they were going to be studying something on the Declaration of Independence, they might read an article by someone who's alive today, and then they should read the actual Declaration of Independence to analyze it. The Socratic Discussion. This is my favorite part of teaching history. And in my homeschool history class, we meet 30 times a year. So we meet about once a week. And we have 3 weeks off for Christmas, a couple weeks off for Easter, a week off for Thanksgiving. And don't think that every time we meet, we have a big, very exciting, interesting Socratic discussion. It takes time for the kids to learn the tools of the historian at the beginning of the year, and then they receive the open-ended question, and then they need time to go do their research. So at the beginning of the year, the first 8 times that we meet, we might have 2 bigger Socratic discussions. As the year goes on, they've already learned the tools, so they don't need to repeat them, and then we start having almost a discussion per week. And the last step is the analytical writing process. And writing a paper for history is different than writing one for English. And most kids are practicing creative type writing. That is wonderful. It's interesting. but in their lifetime, they will rarely be asked to do that. Also, when you're creating argument, if you cannot write your argument down, it's not a good one. So Americans have become very good at expressing themselves in words, but we're very poor in expressing ourselves in writing and creating the argument. So that's the step 5 of this approach to history. And once the children go through these steps a few times, then they will apply this model to all other writing pieces they have where they have to make an argument. And it makes it very easy for them, from age 12 on up through college and through life, if they're trying to make up their mind on something important, or if they have to present something to others, they already have this process to use that's very successful, and it's easy in its way that anybody can do it.